Welcome to our latest Book Reporter Talks To, where my guest today is Jill McCorkle, who is the author of Hieroglyphics, which is just out. Jill and I have known each other for a long time, but we haven't seen each other for 7 years since her last book came out, which was Life After Life. And I just want you to know that when I saw her, it's been years since she'd written a book, and I told her to please speed it up, please go faster. So I'm really happy that she moved it up a decade just so I would be able to talk to you about hieroglyphics today. And Jill, really, I'm glad we picked up the pace. And the last time we saw each other, we were in Kansas City at Winter Institute. It was freezing cold. There was lots of snow on the ground, so it's definitely different right now. I wish we lived closer so we could spend more time together, but I'm very happy to have her as our guest today. So welcome, Jill.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Carol.
So why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about hieroglyphics?
Oh, okay. Well, as you've said, years in the making, but it's a novel that really grew out of my interest in these two historical events. A train wreck that happened in my native county in the early 40s, and then the Cocoanut Grove Fire. I lived in Boston for all those years. And in both cases, and just reading, I was always taken with the list of items used to identify people, and just really thinking about the minutia of our lives, those things we might put in our pocket first thing in the morning, thinking nothing of them, but should something happen, they take on great significance and meaning. And so that's not much of an idea for a novel, but that is where it began, just thinking about those little bits and pieces of our lives that we often take for granted. And I'm thinking of a lot of them these days during the pandemic. They just things that we do take for granted, the power of memory and the way those memories really make up our lives.
As I was reading it, I hadn't connected that it was really influenced by two. I knew there were two events in the book, but I didn't know there were actual events till I read the afterword. And as I was reading those, I was thinking about how many people who had been on that train that day. And, there were so many people, and we always know it as a number. We know X number of people died, X number of things happened, but there's stories behind those people. And what I felt like is you really mine the stories of what could have been these two people on this train and what happened to them. And I find it so interesting because what you do is you give them these full body experiences of who they were and who their lives were based on little kernels of information and not much more. Like it's just, these are two people that could have been on this train and what happened.
Yeah. And I reading the accounts, one of the images that stayed with me, and I didn't take on this character, but it was such a driving image, was in the aftermath, there was a wedding veil up in the tree. And, newspapers, the newspaper of the day, and just coins and buttons and objects. And my dad, as a boy, had gone along with many other people to sort of look over the aftermath. And like the Cocoanut Grove Fire, it was an event that really called on the whole community to come out in a way that they rarely did.
But it's those moments where it's, these people are there, but there's this little snapshot of their lives, and we're only seeing the snapshot when the accident happened, but there were full-bodied lives around these. And what you do is construct these histories and everything of what happens with people, and you do it so brilliantly. If you've done it again here, we have all these little random pieces of people that come together, and they just tell their stories. And I think that's about your work, the imagining.
Yeah, I really wanted to give that sensation of a whole life. I think, and also in the book, just exploring how little we often know about the private lives of those people closest to us. you know, so it's a lot about parents and children, and and how much we don't know.
Hmm.
And I guess, you know, it's hard to write a book about what you don't know and you never find out. But um, it's so interesting to me that there are these big gaps, and we come to these places in life where we, you know, the real mystery is how do you figure out a way to accept what you don't know,
Hmm.
and sort of just commit to the unknown and continue forward. And so, you know, I have my character Lil. Her mother went off to the Coconut Grove without telling anyone where she was going, and so the whole end of her life is just this mystery that
Hmm.
that leaves my character haunted, really,
Hmm.
for the rest of her life.
Hmm. And in that haunting, it's like, who was she really with that night? What really happened? What was my father? What did he know? What did he not know? And there's so many questions that she goes through her whole life trying to piece and figure out. And at the same time, you have her husband who's sitting there with his own tragedy. So you have these two people who have lost parents in a tragedy, and then they have to put their lives together after that. And for both of them, I think that they have what they're trying to unravel, but also the surviving parent has a lot of what they're trying to figure out of what was going on with their spouse. What did they know and what didn't they know?
Exactly. Um, yeah, I mean, and there's a lot that the characters, the husband and wife, don't know about each other.
Mhm.
Or if they do, there's that whole gray area of just not acknowledging a
Mhm.
truth. And so I have one character who is just obsessed. Lil, the wife, is just obsessed with knowing everything. You know,
Mhm.
she is that kind of person who's going to look under the bed and shine a light in every corner, every cobweb. And her husband has really compartmentalized his life and put the lid on a lot of things and shelved it. Um, so they have that struggle between them, you
Mhm.
know, that conflict. And then I have the younger mother character, Shelley, who basically has just decided to close and lock every door to her past.
Mhm.
Um, you know, but there's that kind of rattling, haunting of her life. She eventually will have to deal with some things.
And
And then I have the kid character who, I always enjoy having children. I love their liberated freedom of speech
mhm. With
and thought.
unbridled attention to any
Yes,
subject. And that's what I felt
yes,
they were. It was, he has this unbridled attention of what's going on. And he will just come out with anything. And what you have in children, the child characters, is if the story's moving in a certain direction, the child can move it in a completely different direction
right.
very, very swiftly by just asking a question or bringing something up that people may never have thought about. And the child's going to say, but what about this? And then all of a
Yes,
sudden, you as a writer can move it a different way.
exactly. Yeah, and it was a lot of fun because I saw Lil and Frank, the older characters. You know, they're in their 80s, and so yes, there's the present day time, but so much of what they're dealing with is looking back on life.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a kid like Harvey, and basically all he's doing is looking forward, you
Mm-hmm.
know, with imagination and what might happen next.
And lots of questions. He has lots of questions
Lots of
all the time.
questions.
Lots of
Yes.
questions that he wants to have the answers to. You know what is interesting too is the couple has retired. They've moved down to North Carolina to be closer to their daughter. They've moved from up in New England, and I love the neighbor who keeps calling and telling them what's going on at their house now. And
Yes.
I just thought that was this very humorous moment because there are a lot of people who do relocate, they do leave, but this woman is intent on saying the perennials have been torn up with this. And so as a result, Lil has got not just memories of being in the house, but now trying to picture this house and why is this woman doing these things? I thought that was just this little coda on what happens when you move away.
Yes. Yes. And it's painful. You
Yes.
know, it's really painful to imagine, leaving a place that you're committed to. And yeah, so I did have fun with those phone calls, as painful as they were.
The phone calls were so great because the things that the woman felt that she needed to share, and her husband's going, why don't you just not take the call from her anymore? But there's a part of her that still wants to know that life has gone on. Part of her still wants to know what's happening there.
Yes,
Didn't want it to stop.
and as Lil says, this is one of the few people who shares her memories of a particular time. And, for the woman on the other end, Lil remembers her husband when he was alive. So, for that woman, it's a touchstone. And I do think that's true. I think when you have a sibling, there are memories that nobody else can have that you share with that sibling and other people in your life. And so for me, that neighbor just represents that whole stretch of time that Lil was busy raising kids and in and out of that house.
And Lil's got a lot of notes and memories, diaries. And I thought those were so interesting to see what she worried about at different phases of her life, what she cared about. And when you look at those, sometimes they're from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and you're just saying, this was the most important thing. And it makes me remember, my children are older now, but all those things that really mattered when they were 7 and 8 and 9 that were so critical, like you have to do your homework, you have to do this, you have to go to this sport, you're sitting on the sideline. And then all of a sudden it just fades away and becomes nothing at all. It's just not a part anymore. But her going back and reading those, it's almost like this painful transcript in some ways of her life, because she's trying to figure out, what did she do right and what did she do wrong? Because she's still questioning her life and she's questioning her marriage.
Yes. And it is this kind of weird time travel. I mean, it's funny, the power of those bits and pieces, and not just photographs, when you come across the project, that your kid did in school or whatnot. I mean, I think that's why moving is often so hard, because you just go on this journey that you're not even expecting sometimes. But over the past about 5 years ago, I noticed I love to go to the yoga class, and I probably spent the first 3 years worried that I was going to fall down or something. and then once I really got into it, I had the strangest thing where I realized that every time that we went into Shavasana at the end, I would if I didn't think I was like asleep in my bed, I would often wake, sort of come to, and I had always been walking my old walking path around my kids' elementary school in Massachusetts, and it was just, I don't know why my mind would go there every single time. And I just was kind of fascinated by that. And, and I would come to, and I was 20 years older and 700 miles from that place.
Right.
But, and I just, it was very moving in a strange way when that happens, or when your memory really
comes in,
really
like that.
Takes you back.
It's funny because you also write about yoga that she brought her own blocks and everything because she didn't want to know whose butt had sat on them. And I was like, oh my gosh, Jill has read my mind, because I started going to yoga about 2 years ago, and I thought all the blankets smelled. I mean, I thought that was horrible. And I said, I'm going to have to buy all my own things and bring them. And believe me, I am not Miss Neat Freak or whatever. But when I read that in the book, I just burst out laughing. And I was like, oh gosh, Jill knows what's going on. But I also have to tell you that since the pandemic, I tried Zoom yoga, and I am not good at this, because when you go to the yoga studio, you're in the room and there's nothing else. Well, if I'm doing this in my bedroom or in my office, I was like, oh, I should really straighten the bed. Oh, I should really do this. And the third class that I took, I was answering email in the middle of it. So I just realized this is not something that's going to work. So, but when you talk about Shavasana, when you can really just drop into a zone, to sit there and say that that's where your memory goes to is always so interesting. Of what does the thought become?
Yeah, it is so interesting. And that was much more pleasant than the time I thought I was in my own bed, and the man beside me, I thought he was my little dog snoring. And, you know, I made the mistake of saying, "Oh my gosh, I thought you were Buster." He never came back to class.
It's like, okay,
I felt responsible.
responsible for that. Yeah.
But you know, oftentimes I think when I'm really involved with the character and they're on the page moving, that it's not unlike Shavasana, you know, when your mind is just going to roam, and to have a character like Lil that I could really dip in and out with the fragments of these
Mhm.
memories was a lot of fun. And I think in so many ways the novel, it's about memory, and
Mhm.
it's about, you know, what we leave. I mean, what will other people know of us but
What's going
from
to be the
these little
memory?
scraps?
Yeah. What's going to be memory from these all these little pieces? And the hieroglyphics is we meet this cast of characters. They've all suffered loss. They've all suffered loss on different levels, and they're filled with longing. And I think that that is the one thing that unites them all. Everybody wants something, and they want something really big. It's not like the child just wants a toy. He wants to know what's going on with his life. Where was it? What's on with his dad? What's happening? Where's the future going? And everybody has a question. They have a question about where people went that one night, or why were they on that train and it happened there? And really, what were the last words that the father said? And it's just all these questions that everybody sits and has. And I think that you do such a good job of weaving those in and out while still propelling the story forward. Because it's one of those books I felt like I needed to do a careful read on. You can't zip through because you could miss some tiny clue that you've woven into the pages as time goes on. Is that intentional, that weaving?
Um, yeah, yes, yes. But you know, I think a lot of it happened just by having lots of fragments come together in the first draft. But then, you know, with revision, I was aware of that weaving and wanting to get the right amounts. I think a lot of my revision work was getting rid of things that were a little too extraneous, you know, so that you were not alert to what you really needed to know. But you know, I got a couple of surprises myself along, you know, along the way, things that happened. And of course, I resurrected a trial from my prior novel, Life
Yeah.
After Life, because
Yeah.
so many readers were upset with me that I didn't solve the crime that is committed in Life After Life. And, you know, at the time I thought, well, I'm going for the most realistic approach. Young women like this who are kind of invisible in our society, th- they do um, die without a whole lot of search
Mm-hmm.
and attention. And so I thought I was giving it a realistic ending, but some readers were not pleased. And so I did solve that. The trial is going on in the background of hieroglyphics. So justice is served.
I caught that. I caught that. And I was like, wait a second, these are some characters I already know. Now, I was not upset clearly 7 years ago, or I would have reached out to you. But it's interesting to see that you as an author could actually bring resolution. I mean, that should be the ad campaign. For those who wondered what happens in Life After Life, here's the answer. You know,
Right.
log on.
Yes.
Find all those emails from those people, those angry people. We have the answer for you. You know, which character was the easiest for you to write? Which one came to you and just fully formed and you could drop in a zone?
Lil.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah. Um, I think just writing about um, both being a mother and a daughter. And, you know, I'm at that point. Yes, you know, my kids are out of the house now, you know, but still very much between, because my mother is still living. She has dementia and has for a decade.
Mm.
And but I'm still in that place where the daily thought process involves both ends of that spectrum. So I'm mother and daughter.
You're still in the middle
and
place.
wife in the middle, but and so to juggle all those hats and to give Lil a lot of my own wonderful memories of those, what you're talking about, the homework that you might have gotten annoyed by on a particular day, but we look back with such great longing, for those projects, or sitting at a little league game or a ballet recital. And
it's funny because I've been going through boxes during the pandemic. I mean, I'm just like everybody else. I'm cleaning out closets and I'm finding these little tidbits of things. And there was one last week where my younger son had told me that he was 7, that there was something wrong with his computer, but the spelling on this was so funny. They just took a snapshot and sent it to him and he was laughing. But I am making boxes for the 2 of them of all their stuff that they can have, because now I feel like I've looked at it and I don't know if I need to look at it much longer because there's a lot of it.
Right.
There's absolutely, every time I feel that when they came home at the end of the year, maybe the little mark on the paper could have gotten thrown away. Like I didn't need to hold on to all this. And I think you know what I mean.
I do. I learned early that if you don't go through that artwork and make decisions about what to keep, at the end of the school year, you've got a mountain, and it gets harder and harder to let go of things.
They had art class twice a week and they brought it home.
Right.
None of it stayed at the school. None of it went to museum. It's all in the attic. So,
right. And how many macaroni necklaces did you get?
It's kind of wondering why there were not mice eating through these projects in the attic, because there was a lot of food involved in a lot of
food.
These necklaces that were made and whatever. So now, which was the character that challenged you the most?
I think Frank.
Mm-hmm. Let's see that.
Shelley was loads of fun because Shelley's just kind of, no filters to her and all plugs unplugged. Frank was the greater challenge because, a man and an older man and, someone who teaches something I've never taught. I mean, so, his life was just the hardest for me.
And what secrets did he have? And what secrets did he have? And which ones want to be revealed or which don't? Or were there? That's where the whole thing is all along. What really was going on?
Right.
What was happening with Frank? So at one point, Frank pines on the idea that as a child, he was sleeping 20 miles away from Lil. They were that close. And he marvels at the odds that they would find each other. And you seem to plumb the everyday thoughts of the characters like this, of just, I was sleeping that night and she was that close to me. And I think that that's one of the charms of your writing is it's these very simple things that are a very big deal for people and how they meet each other.
Yes, and they're the kinds of things you don't recognize until after the fact. It's the kind of thing that really does connect people when they meet. Mm-hmm. It feels like fate. Mm-hmm. When it happens and all these interesting connections line up that you weren't expecting. And they had both had to grow up pretty quickly based on the losses. So, they meet at one of those corny parties where they're playing all those games like passing lifesavers on a toothpick or, all those things designed to make people up close and touch one another. And they're both just awkward with it. I mean, they both, I think at one point Lil says something like, I wasn't an adolescent girl even when I was the right age to be an adolescent girl.
Right.
So
I was always grown up. I always felt like I had to be older because there were all these, it was because of her past of what happened there. She was thrust in a very different situation. I always think about those chance meetings. My husband and I actually met on a ski slope in Crested Butte, Colorado.
Oh, wow.
Which is not Vail, not Aspen. It's this little quiet town in the Rockies.
Mhm.
We met there. We were both from New Jersey. And if we did not meet there is no way our paths would have intersected. We lived about 45 minutes away from each other. I was in publishing. He was in engineering. We had gone to different schools. He lived on 9 acres. I lived in a suburb. There is no way our lives ever would have collided, except for the fact that we both ended up in this ski town and met. And
Wow.
and we met in like this bar where after skiing, he happened to mention I was from New Jersey. And he said, I am too. And I said, do you like the Giants? I don't know how this ever came up. He said, yes. I said, literally, I was reading a book. I was literally not paying attention. I said, well, you should give me your card because my father always has extra Giant tickets and doesn't know what to do with them. So I got the card. So I said that he dated me for the Giant tickets. And he goes, no, they were in the end zone, not on the 50-yard line. So I'm like, okay, so that had no bearing on it at all. But if I didn't take that trip, I often think, what would have happened in my life? If they didn't both go to that party, what would have happened in their lives? And I think that's those little moments.
Yes. And, you know, early on when I was working on the novel, a friend in Boston knew that I was researching the Coconut Grove. And she sent me this wonderful obituary. And at the end it said, you know, on November 28th, 1942, this woman was supposed to have gone to the Coconut Grove.
Wow.
And at the last minute, she did this instead. So you would always hear people who almost were there, you know, or the people, you know, on the sad other end, who lost someone or knew of someone. So it is that kind of stroke of fate or chance or whatever we might call it. And I think things happen and we marvel, but I feel like the older we get and you look and you can actually see a map of the way all of these parts of your life connect. You're more inclined to think maybe there was a blueprint. Nobody just, but nobody gave me the map. You have to like wander and do the naval maneuver and get lost several times.
And then you find yourself. And then you find yourself and it's like, but how did I get here? Well, there were all these other steps along the way.
Right. Yeah.
There's also a lot of talks about mistakes. Someone makes a mistake and slips and then other mistakes happen. Frank chooses to forget his mistakes. He doesn't want to be reminded of them. And there's a lot of talk about that there. Are mistakes a lot about what shapes us as well? Because we talk about people's successes shaping us, but also some of the mistakes that happen along the way shape us in the same way.
Oh, I think so. And I think room for accidents. I think it's a really important, what is the Dixie Chick, or now the Chicks song, wide open spaces, room enough to make a big mistake. And more and more, I think that we've tightened the screws on our society where kids don't have the chance to make as many mistakes, or someone gets labeled or pegged or demoted, and it's really hard to climb back. Whereas, penicillin, we've gotten a lot of good things out of mistakes or happenstance. And I just think that we all deserve that. And I think part of that second chance is being able to admit or come to terms with a mistake or, some reckoning. I think it's a great way to learn and sort of find a better place. And I don't know if that's a Mars Venus thing or not. In this novel, at least in this marriage, Frank wants to forget the mistake, and Lil is willing, once she's satisfied with the answer. So,
yeah, once it's all come together, it's okay, I can live with this, but not until she knows all the pieces, not until she knows everything that's going on. Frank's also drawn to his old home, and he thinks of physical things left behind there, memories. And his old home is Shelley's home, the other character in this book. And he keeps showing up at her house, and he wants to get into her house. He wants to get into her backyard. And you think about how terrifying it must be for this woman that this guy is knocking on her door. Hi, can I come in? Hi, can I come in? I lived here once. And I think we all want to go back to our old homes and see them. But somehow Frank approaching Shelley like this is just so off. It is just so off, but he's obsessed.
He is obsessed. And, you know, for the longest time, I was really worried because I had the Shelley Harvey story I was committed to. I had the Lil Frank story I was committed to. And they had nothing in common, I thought. You know, I'm like, why? What am I doing with these different storylines? But of course, Frank is an archaeologist or has taught archaeology courses, and if you were doing a dig, it's like Shelley and Harvey are living right on top of what was Frank's world, you know. So you're stacking, they're occupying the same physical space at a different time. And so, and then I was like, oh, well, that makes sense, you know. And so Harvey actually is pocketing all these little things that he's found that Frank had hidden away in his boyhood. So that's really the connection.
And he doesn't know why they're coming up there. He doesn't know why they're all coming together, but he's like, well, I found this thing. And then the only person who could possibly describe it to him is Frank. But his mother doesn't want Frank to come into the house. But meanwhile, he's finding all these treasures and all these little pieces, all these pieces of Frank's life. You know, I think that there's something about a child and their wonderment and their just constant awe of the world, and they're not editing themselves, makes them such a fun character, because then they can tell part of the story by just being completely naive about what's going on. And it's like, well, Mom, look what I found. And it's like, what's happening? Where did that come from? You know?
Yes. I had a lot of fun with Harvey. You know, I like people at either end of the time spectrum, because I think there's a lot in common. You know, the two times in life when you stop caring what everybody else is thinking, and it's just, you know, off the tongue, straight from the heart or mind.
And we saw that in Life After Life. And it's almost like you've recreated that same kind of a spirit that was in Life After Life with these two characters, the way these two come together, you know? And he's still got questions about his own life too. Like, who's my dad? Where's my dad? Where's my brother? What's going on? I mean, he has so much going on in his head that almost finding the treasures that are left from Frank are the most grounded things he has going on in his life. And that's going to become a different kind of it's a friendship that he understands and he can relate to, because there's so many empty holes in his life. That's what I felt with him.
Definitely. And of course he has this older brother who, in a misguided way, has told him about a lot of serial killers and things. And so, you know, but between what he's heard and a lot of old folk tales and ghost tales. I mean, I was that kid, you know, I must have read Ghost of the Carolinas about 1 million times in elementary school, and it would just terrify me every time I read it, but I kept going back for more. And so I incorporated some of those stories. You know, I'm letting Harvey devour all of that.
Yeah. And that's the reason I think that I found myself pacing reading the book, so I could pay close attention to all those little things, because they all, like with Life After Life, all these things are coming together. They're all there for a reason. It's not like Jill McCorkle just put this thing down on the page and it's not going to matter, folks. It's like, pay attention for later on. At what point did you know it was all going to get woven together? Like, you had all these storylines, but was it in the first draft or did it come later?
Oh, it came later. I mean, I think writing a novel like this, Oh, it's a leap of faith, and at one time I just had a floor full of bits and pieces myself. And so as soon as I had the backdrop of the real events that happened and sort of did the timeline of Lil and Frank's lives and when they met and when they retired, it was more just getting those physical dates, in place. And then a lot of the other pieces, Lil and her dance school and various movies they saw, that's kind of the fun pieces to go back and weave onto that timeline. So I had written a lot of scenes. I was lucky enough maybe a dozen years ago to get asked to teach a writing class in Florence. I told someone earlier, Italy, not South Carolina. And I fell in love with the Foundling Hospital there and looking at all those little tokens that had been left with some infant, and some mother's hope of one day coming back or finding that child. And it was so moving, and I just took loads of notes and kept writing about it, and just the whole scene of that building and the light. And I had no idea what I would do with it, or am I writing an essay? Where will this go? And I was like, oh my gosh, well, Lil has to have gone to Florence, because suddenly that's what her whole story is, that her mother basically leaves the house, as we all do, I'll be back. And then she isn't. And so for me, that was the real heart of it. But it was something I had written before, not fully knowing what I would do with it.
You write lots of notes from what I've read. You write lots of notes, you put things down, you're not sure what you're going to do with them, but you sort of like flip through these index cards and there's a story there, but you're not exactly sure where it's going to go at any particular moment, but they're thoughts.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, that's the process. I don't know if it's like if you give a mouse a cookie, ADD way to write a novel or what, but I mean, it has, as I have gotten older, I think the work that process has become more fragmented. I love to work on short stories, and there's such a sense of wholeness, when you have all the parts of a story. And so sometimes I feel like I'm writing scenes in the same way I write a story.
Okay.
And I'll feel like, okay, so I write this whole scene, but I know it's not a story. I know it gets plugged in somewhere. And, I mean, again, back to those years raising kids, or when you've got so much going on in life, I started writing that way. I'm not sure I could have continued at the same pace, even though it took 7 years.
It could have taken 14, Carol.
It could have taken 14, Carol. It just to have a notebook or paper in the pocketbook, and that's just been the process. And a lot of those, I think a lot of the New England landscape memories for me came from a similar place, because I surprised myself how much I fell in love with that area. And of course my kids grew up there, and I love the winter, which I no longer get. And so I found myself constantly, having Lil remembering kind of winter.
I
And
like the moment where she buys all the perennial plants at the end of the year for rock bottom prices, and then they come back the next year, because that's me. I always go and say, where's the little one that's not really going to survive on sale? And I'll bring that home, put it in the ground, and then in the spring, it's like, "Ah, look at that. That's what it was," because it looks nothing like the picture when you buy it. It just looks dead. It looks like this little dead, like little mousetrap or something.
yes, I did that. There was this one nursery, and the peonies, it looked like you were buying an empty pot,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no color. You weren't even sure there was a root ball in there until you got home. And and then spring came, and I've never seen an ugly peony. So
No, but there's all those moments that you just go and it looks like a bunch of roots or just a bunch of what you'll be cleaning out of the garden. And then all of a sudden, oh, this is really great. It's kind of funny because we were in the garden the other day and I said to my husband, the stuff behind that one lounge chair, is that a weed? And he said, yes. And I said, because I thought those were the daisies coming back. He goes, no, the daisies are gone. That is weed. But we have very tall ones and they sort of block the view of the property next door. So I'm kind of like, we'll be gone to take them down, but they're definitely weeds. But it's like, wow, they're privacy weeds. Maybe we should. How long did you live in Massachusetts? How many years were you there?
almost 20.
Wow. Okay. See, I always think of you as living in the South. I never thought of you living up in Massachusetts. So you've done winter. You know what that's like.
Oh yeah, I have. Yes.
That's right.
I think I just always felt like I had a foot in both places.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the word hieroglyphics, because I actually looked up the definition. I'm going to put my glasses and read this. It's a character used in a system of pictorial writing, particularly that form used in ancient Egyptian monuments. Hieroglyphic symbols may represent the objects that they depict, but usually stand for particular sounds or groups of sounds. So based on that, how did this come to be the title?
I was just thinking of symbols and words, but also symbols and marks that come to stand for something.
Mm-hmm.
And you look it up in some places and it will refer to a sacred script. And so I was thinking of all kinds of beyond the keyboard, Shelley's shorthand,
Mm-hmm.
the kind of coding that Harvey's brother's learning in school. I was thinking of kids hopscotch boards, which I haven't seen one of those, marked on a sidewalk in a long time. But just everything, I was thinking of it led me to think of, I don't know, graffiti on a wall or a mark on a wall or ceiling in your house, that we then identify of a particular time, heights on doorways.
Mm-hmm.
And
the hieroglyphics of your life. They're hieroglyphics of your life. These little pieces, these little notes that Lil is finding, these little pieces, these Harvey's unearthing in his backyard. They're all these little touchstones of people's lives that come together and they're forming the story. When I first picked up the book, I was like, where is this title coming from? But then as you see all the little fragments, you see it's the little pieces of people's lives coming together, which is just amazing. I love this other part too. There's so many great lines. I mean, there are a lot of great lines that I was going through. Here's one that struck me. I suppose some of us have to see the edge before we understand how good it all is. And then if you're lucky, you still have time on the other side. And I think that's such a great moment because so many of us are striving for the next moment, the next moment. And if there's that moment you can stop and go, it's really quite good right now. And I think that during the pandemic, a lot of us have been taking hold of what really matters. If you talk about a book that has a great timing in a lot of ways, it's those fragments of your life coming together, but those huge moments, they're really just made up of all those little moments. They're not any big one thing happening. A lot of big things have not happened the last couple of months, but a lot of little great things have.
Yeah. And I think I'm also aware, during this time, all those times when you want to complain about something, and then I'm like, wait a minute, what do I have to complain about? It really has, I think, put a lot in perspective. And yeah, we all have, I really miss hugging my children.
Right.
And I really miss going to the movies. I love to go to the movies by myself in the middle of the day when I can. That's just the most luxurious thing.
Yeah.
And I have really missed sitting in a dark, cool theater.
It's funny because when I was growing up, if I couldn't find somebody to go to the movies with, I'd always go by myself. And people go, you go by yourself to the movies? And I said, if it's a question of not going to the movie or going to the movie, I'm going. But I was reading yesterday that they're wondering if people have moved away from going to movie theaters, like because they're so used to the small screen at this point. What is it going to mean when it comes back? Because people are adapting to doing different things. People are adapting to Zoom. People are adapting to talking to authors on Zoom. People are adapting to all these different things. What will it mean of before and after of what's going on? And when will you be comfortable to go back to the movie theater? What will it take?
Well, maybe the vaccine. I don't know. But I think I heard Spike Lee on CNN or something. He said he would go back after a vaccine.
After a vaccine.
But oh wow, I can't imagine not being in the big theater. I love being in a theater.
And there's certain films that only work on the theater, on the big screen. We saw Ford versus Ferrari last year, and my husband said without the soundtrack there, without everything big it just wouldn't have been the same watching it on television. It's just not the same kind of an experience. And I'm wondering how experiences are going to change as a result. Because in another place, Frank tells Henry, you're just getting started. You have so much to remember. And I get the feeling with lines like that, their book clubs are going to have a lot to talk about because it is so true. It's when you look at a small child, you realize all the experiences they still have to have. And I think that book clubs reading this book at different times in their life, young moms reading this will have different experiences from people who are in the middle of those child years. And they'll read it very differently from those who have already gone through the children years.
Right.
And I'm looking forward. Do you do book club talks? Do you talk to book clubs a lot? Have you done that?
I have. And I have a couple lined up. So yeah, and it's very satisfying, to hear the questions.
If people wanted to talk to you about this, can they reach out to you on your website, or what's the best way to get in touch with you to schedule the event?
Sure. Or through, I don't know if my website has a connect, definitely through the publisher.
Okay, great. And just say that this is what you want to do. Okay. So you were first published in 1984, and you had 2 books come out that year. And since then, your book releases have been more paced. How's that for a word? It's been more okay. You teach creative writing. And what do you enjoy about the fact of writing, of teaching creative writing? Is it something where you get energy from their students as well, besides helping them with their work?
I definitely do. I have taught for over 30 years now, and I feel like it keeps me in touch with what's happening in a better way. When my kids were in the house, I felt like I knew a lot more than I know now. But it happens in the classroom, and it's also so exciting to watch someone. It's like watching someone, take off the training wheels and not look back and keep pedaling off. And I love seeing that progression in their work, and seeing someone get excited about reading something, or the idea that they can just take pen and paper and start.
Just keep going from there. Start and just keep going. So when you're teaching, are you now, were you teaching this last semester where everything moved remote? And what is it like teaching creative writing remotely?
Well, I just did 2 workshops the past 2 weeks for the Swanee Writers Conference, and they went very well. And I taught Bennington College. My job there is a low residency program, but we always go in June, and we did not go, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So that was in both of those events, there's such great communities. So I really missed that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual workshop went quite well. The one thing that I'm so aware of is that we say goodbye and leave class, and I'm just aware of how we are alone in so many ways. I mean, you may be with your family, but a lot of the students I've had live alone, and that's the big difference. We're not going to get to go see each other, walk into the reading or have dinner and circle back. And so I find the need to maybe check in a little more and circle back one-on-one after
Mm-hmm.
class. And I got the strangest feeling the whole time Bennington was going on. I kept feeling like they were all really there. Everybody else was really there, and I was the person.
You were the person
not.
Yeah.
I mean,
everybody wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, I watch the news, and I keep forgetting that they're like not, where we're used to seeing them, or it's very strange.
It's a very strange time. But I also find that I only used to talk on the phone driving to and from work. Okay, because it was an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours to get to and from work. So that was a great time. And I never talked on the phone at home. So when the whole pandemic started, I realized if I ever want to talk to those friends again, I was going to have to figure out something else.
Right.
So I would talk while I was weeding. I would talk because it was, wait a second, can I just sit and talk on the phone? I rarely do that. And it actually had to train myself for that skill. So you could actually be able to just do this one thing sitting outside.
Right.
And I think that with the students, or with, people even on the staff writing and stuff, what everybody's doing, but you have to still check in about the little nuances, because you're reading their writing, you're seeing the class, but you didn't see them pick up their bag to walk out and hesitate for a moment and wonder why they hesitated, or wonder why that one little thing. And I think that we're missing the nuances of life, though we've got the big things right. We've got the little, and to pick up on the nuance, I think is a lot more difficult right now. And I think creative writing, as a result, you can write that into your work.
Yeah, it's that's part of the community. I mean, that's where I think we will always have a need for socializing and community. No, I mean, I've been shocked at how easy the actual class is. But a friend and I, who we normally co-teach together, and because of Zoom, we ended up splitting up our classes. This is the writer Amy Hempel. And so we were so disappointed we couldn't teach together. So at the end, we merged our groups with a big Zoom, and it was kind of like a party. I mean, everybody was real excited about it. So I think we're going to plan another of those, because even if it's brief, I do think we need that connection. I mean, I find that I stand with my mask on and probably have longer conversations with several of the people who work in the grocery store I go to. Then we were even talking about this recently, that there is that need for that communication. Of course, it's weirdly hard to hear when you're wearing a mask. So everybody's like yelling.
It's all muffled. Yeah, I found when I was checking out in the food store yesterday, we were talking to the person like, oh, how was your day? And I always chat with the people, but it felt like they were looking at us like, oh yeah, it's really good. Everything's okay.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about Lysoling or wiping down.
No.
It was conversation. It was conversation and talking.
Yeah, I think people have adapted.
So when you did Life After Life, here's an example. You had a 28 city tour. I remember this. It was this huge tour that you went on, and you're not going to be touring this time. And instead though, you may have the potential to reach a lot more people. because you'll be able to, I mean, even with this interview that will be seen by hundreds of people, it'll be a different experience because there may be places you couldn't go to and you couldn't get to, or there's also the stress. Everybody thinks business travel is so great. And then they didn't have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to make the plane, to do the television thing, to do whatever.
Right.
So what are you looking forward to about talking about hieroglyphics this time?
Well, I'm just getting started on this tour,
Mm-hmm.
but it is so interesting that I have this kind of conversation, and I'm realizing, well, no, I'm not going to go back to a hotel room.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can just go take my normal walk. And there's something really wonderful about that. But it is a kind of where worlds collide, because I also routinely enjoyed book tours because it also kind of gave you this quiet time that you don't always get in normal life. So we're having to figure all that out. I think most important is I could go on a book tour with a tiny little bag and just wear black and change out the scarf and the earrings. And now you see, I how many times can I wear this shirt? So there are some differences. Of course, you don't have to worry about the pants.
Right. You don't have to worry about the whole outfit. Well, it's funny because I always like to match the cover of the author's book. So I went up and got my blue sweater, but this is a winter sweater. This is like winter weight that normally I would never put on in July. Like I would never be doing this, but I'm like, I'm in the house, it's air conditioned, who cares? But if I was in the office, there's no way this would have happened.
Right. And it looks beautiful. You had just the right shade of blue.
I'm working on it. I go through the closet with the cover of the book and just say, what to do. But and it's nice because you're not always planning in advance. Like, I'm going to go do this today and that today. And I have to think all this in advance. Also, I'm a terrible packer. You could do it in one suitcase. I always leave with every backup plan possible. Like I have more clothes when I travel. And I did love the flights across the country because you would have 5 hours of no email coming in, no one talking to you. You could just get something done. Exactly. And you were really all caught up until you landed and you turned on your phone and then it was whomp, 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 whomp. And I'm like, I felt so good there for about 5 hours.
Yeah. No, it's true. I agree. I used to get a lot of writing done on book tour.
Oh, this is scary. Jill, if you didn't have the book tour to do this is really scary. I'm all worried now. No, are you working on something now?
I'm working on short stories now.
Great.
But I have a new novel idea, so I sort of always have it on the back burner. And
let's see, it's 2020. Let's see, 2027. let's cut it in half. Let's go to 2023.
Okay, I'll work fast, or maybe we can talk when it's
okay.
stories.
We could do that. We'll talk again when there's stories because I don't want to wait because we've always had so much fun chatting, and I was like,
so much fun, and I look forward to when we can be in person.
We'll definitely figure that out. But there was always a chance you weren't going to come through New York, so at least now we got to do this.
Yes, I know. And I love to come to New York.
So, well, I thank you for joining us today. I
thank you so much, Carol. I really appreciate it. It's always fun to talk to you.
Well, it's fun. And to our readers, we look forward to seeing you next time. Meanwhile, enjoy hieroglyphics.